And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PSBTA Technical Webinar Solutions Series. My name is Martha Ellis, and I'm the Executive Director for the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, or the PSBTA. As an association, our primary objective is to work as a FirstNet end user advocate. All first responders and service providers who support, mitigate any recovery efforts during emergencies can qualify to use FirstNet. We've created this webinar series in an effort to bring you the most current and accurate information on all aspects of broadband use for public safety personnel, including the latest developments in technology specific to the ecosystem. For the next 12 weeks, in addition to our regularly scheduled webinars, we will be working directly with FirstNet to bring you a series specifically designed to not only showcase the network, but many of FirstNet-approved applications which can be found in the FirstNet app catalog. The FirstNet built with AT&T lean-in webinars are all about helping you optimize the FirstNet network, assuring the highest level of preparedness. Before we get started today, we have a few housekeeping items. All attendees have automatically been muted to reduce background noise. Any questions should be submitted directly to us through the questions function, which is located at the bottom of the menu on the right side of your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of our presentation. We will attempt to answer as many questions as possible, yet still stay within the allotted hour. We will follow up with any questions that do not get answered during the live portion of this webinar after we are finished today. Should you have further questions when the webinar is over, we will also provide emails for the presenters at the end so you can follow up at your convenience. Today's webinar will feature 3 different applications. Our presenters are Thomas Peters, founder and CEO of RumbleUp, Dan Willingham, Executive Director of Sales for Mutualink, Jeff Durand, Senior Project Manager for Mutualink, and Steve Sher, CEO and founder of Groupdolists. They are here today to bring the FirstNet app catalog to life. They'll discuss their software capabilities, give demonstrations, and share use case scenarios that will help you make those critical application selection decisions for your agencies. In addition to discussing the apps, we also have Steve Devine, Director for FirstNet Strategy and Policy, who will talk about why our nation's most reliable wireless network, FirstNet, is a linchpin in successfully leveraging these kinds of tools. With that, I'm going to turn the time over to Thomas Peters to get us started with our webinar, Hurricanes Won't Be Diverted by COVID-19.
Thank you, Martha. And thank you everyone who has taken time for this presentation. Let me get my presentation up here real quick.
Can you shut the door? Thank you.
I think it was eaten. I'll pull it up in 1 second. Sorry about that.
Hi, how are you?
Hopefully everyone can hear me. All right.
I got 2 minutes.
I'm gonna present. All right, I think one other gentleman still has his microphone on, so we'll get started. So,
yeah.
I hope everyone had a second cup of coffee.
I'm just on a webinar, but I've got 15, 20 minutes.
I'm still hearing one gentleman who I think needs to mute his microphone. All right, here we go. So I hope everyone had a second cup of coffee. I'm going to throw a couple very bold, exciting ideas out to you. Basically, what RumbleUp enables our clients to do is text with America. Even if you don't have the cell phones that you need to contact these individuals, even if they have not opted in to receive your text messages, RumbleUp makes it possible for you to have scalable, two-way, human-driven conversations with them. Since we were founded in 2018, we have contacted over 30 million Americans, so almost 10% of the US population.
Yeah.
And what makes us unique is we are a conversational texting platform. That means that every text is sent by a human being, and it goes through a very easy to use interface, primarily through an app available through FirstNet that allows one person to have up to 500 simultaneous conversations via text at once. We first got the opportunity to use RumbleUp peer-to-peer texting in the aftermath of Hurricane Michael. Time travels fast in 2020. Seems like it's been a long year, I think, for most of us. But in 2018, Hurricane Michael made landfall It was later upgraded to a Category 5 hurricane, the strongest hurricane to hit the continental U.S. since Hurricane Camille in 1969. And this happened roughly 3 weeks before
They are loud.
the midterm elections in 2018. And so we were faced with a humanitarian crisis, and we had a client that was attempting in the midst of all this to also ensure that people were still enfranchised, able to vote either by mail-in ballot or to temporary voting shelter.
Okay.
And so they turned to us. The reason why they turned to us is that texting is the most visible channel. 90% of text messages are read within the first 5 minutes.
Okay.
Texting is the channel that people care most about. It is how we text with our friends and family during
when
a
you talk about a
disaster.
P&L,
And then
with
texting
the
with RumbleUp is 50
so the
times
P&L is
faster
really on the, is it on my
than
LLC
live calling.
or is it on my company?
Sorry
Or is
for
it on
hearing
the
a little bit
company?
of crossover audio. If someone could let a gentleman know he needs to mute his microphone, that'd be great. Anyway, texting with RumbleUp is 50 times faster than live calling at a minimum. At the same time, texting is better than live calling, and email, because people tend to have an overfull email inbox.
The only thing is,
they tend to ignore robocalls,
I don't really keep
and many people never check their voicemail. So these are all reasons why texting was chosen. Second of all, we can help you acquire high quality cell phone numbers for any audience that you are looking for. So in this particular case, in the Hurricane Michael situation, only AT&T's cell phone towers remained intact. And so using our landline scrubber tool and our cell phone verification tool, we were able to help the client ensure that they're only texting people who had an AT&T provisioned phone number. This saved them from texting people who would not receive the message. Over here on the left are 2 screenshots from real conversations. Obviously, we had tens of thousands of conversations with these individuals. The average conversation back and forth was about 7 text messages, and it led with a very open-ended message. It said, you know, hello, first name, Kimberly, this is Judy with the Florida GOP. Are you and your family doing okay in the aftermath of the hurricane? Please reply stop to opt out, or text me back and let me know if I can be of any help to the best of my ability. Thanks, I hope you're all okay. And we just got an extraordinary response. The conversation threads were really incredible. Many of the people that we texted had not been contacted or were not in touch with any local, state or federal aid. A lot of people had basically fled their homes with their cell phone and their pets or their family. And so they were trying to pick up the pieces of their lives with only their cell phone as a point of contact. And they didn't have access to a lot of basic information. And so as you can see from the far left screenshot, our volunteers were equipped with state assistance info, phone numbers, disaster aid websites, insurance assistance, FEMA hotlines. And then as part of this conversation thread, because this was a political party doing the outreach, they asked folks if they would still like to be able to vote. And long story short, we were able to increase the voting participation rate amongst the folks that we contacted by 10% over the previous midterm, and this despite the hurricane. So the client was very happy in terms of increasing the ROI of the outcome that they sought after. But it was an opportunity for us to realize just the power of peer-to-peer texting, even in a disaster situation. Since then, we have done a lot of texting since COVID began related to COVID. We've helped elected officials at the federal and state level contact constituents with CDC guidelines, infographics, and then most importantly, that two-way conversational ability to answer people's questions. And people have lots and lots of questions related to COVID, related to even safely reaching out to safety organizations while maintaining social distancing, etc. There are 4 main ways to use RumbleUp. I'll start by saying it's an extremely simple platform to get started with. It's a turnkey system, takes about 15 minutes to create an account. And then especially for FirstNet clients, we will be working with you hand in hand to make sure that our product is the right fit for your use case, to understand what you need to see happen in terms of integrations. We have a Zapier integration, et cetera. And then if we're not the best fit, we'll happily connect you back to FirstNet. And just in the interest of time, of these 4 use cases, I'm going to focus most on number 1 and number 2, because I think number 3 and number 4, this is an example of a lot of possible overlap with some of the other excellent apps that are going to be showcased today. So the number 1 way to use RumbleUp is simply to create a text-in number. There are so many agencies that the only way of contacting them is via a web form or an email address or calling a number. And I don't think any of us really are excited, especially in crisis situations, to get on a phone number behind a long queue of other people. I think a lot of us heard about what happened when the Democrat caucus app crashed in Iowa during the caucuses. Suddenly you had hundreds of precinct captains trying to call the same number and waiting hours and hours, some of them only to be disconnected in the end. By creating a text-in number, you can have a voicemail, you can have there's something on your social media advertising on your website that says, have a question, text us. And as people text in, their phone number and information is captured. And then as your agents, or if you want to outsource it to one of our certified sending teams, as they reply back, it creates tags in real time so that you know exactly what that person requested. And this can create automated follow-up responses to basically solve more problems, or solve more issues in less time. The second major use case is to text any audience. If you have a geography, for instance, people in low-lying areas where storms, hurricane surge, a storm surge is expected to approach, instead of, in addition to sending them an in-app notification through the emergency app notification service, you could send them a text message that's targeted perhaps to their demographics. Maybe these are people who are known to be elderly, mobility impaired, whatever the criteria for that message may be. And then as they have questions, they can text back. And the difference with this is now you're getting first-party information back that you can immediately share with other agencies on the ground, so that people can mark themselves safe. People can say what other needs they may have. Maybe their car is broken, a million different things. The difference is that you have a transparent, fast textable system to cover it. How it works is extremely simple. Typically, the administrators will be logging into a secure website via laptop or desktop, and the recipients will just be receiving a text message. They don't have to download an app or anything. However, we also do have that app in the FirstNet App Store where you can be on the ground using that to securely communicate with whatever audiences you've created. This is just some screenshots of our web browser. This also works on tablets and on smartphones as well. I'll just go real quickly. The dashboard gives you real-time reporting information. We have the best deliverability in the market, so you know that your essential messages are getting delivered. We have an easy, intuitive message creator, so you can add images, videos, multimedia content like that, and dynamic tags, so you can create a personalized message for every single person, even if you're texting a million people. We have a conversational screen, which is much like if any of you have used Facebook Messenger, only it's supercharged, so you can quickly apply conversation responses and then move on to the next conversation. And then you can manage your team of texters. You're in complete control of the platform. I won't spend much time on this screen. Happy to email this to anyone who needs it. It basically just shows you that having been in the business for 2.5 years and contacted 10% of America, we know what we're doing when it comes to text messaging, all the ins and outs. Finally, we're happy to offer $50 in free texting to anyone who mentions FirstNet to us. And we have a dedicated email for FirstNet subscribers, FirstNet@RumbleUp.com, or you can text us. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll hand it over to Dan now.
Appreciate it, Thomas. Thank you for that. And we should be good. All right. Like I said, I appreciate everybody taking the time to spend with us today. Let me get this screen out of our way here. All right. All right, sorry about that. I just had another pop up from the webinar in front of my screen here. So Mutualink, we are living in obviously a troublesome time right now with COVID-19, civil unrest, and of course, to add to that mix, we're now going into hurricane season, which makes it more important than ever for entities to be able to communicate with each other using their existing resources that they have currently in place. To give you a little rundown of what Mutualink is, so we are with our multiple certifications that we had, we've been doing true interoperability services for the past 14 years now. We currently supply interoperability services to thousands of state, local, federal agencies, and even enterprise customers across the country, giving them the ability to leverage existing communication resources to use in conjunction with each other through secure connections. Mutualink provides immediate and complete continuity among and across DHS components and federal agencies, which also provides that complete continuity between federal agencies and state and local agencies. This is one of the many reasons why Mutualink is the sole supplier of FEMA's interoperability gateway system, which I'll briefly discuss here in a moment. So Mutualink solved a very big problem that came out from 9/11, and that foundation was basically what our network was built on, and that was seamless collaboration. So we are a peer-to-peer invitation-based platform that allows the customer to bring in any type of radio, any type of video system, telephone, IoT connections, anything that can reach the internet, bring it into our platform, utilize in a secure manner in case of an incident to be shared across in a sovereign manner. So each customer keeps their sovereignty, and they are completely secure from anybody else infringing on their network, their connections, their endpoints. That user still has complete control, can add it, can pull it away at any given time. I think it's Motorola system communicating with the Harris system, and so on and so forth. Same thing with your video system. Doesn't matter if it's an IP-based system. It doesn't matter if it's an analog. It could be an old 10, 15-year-old analog system that's sitting in a room, and that signal won't reach out those four walls. We could bring it in a secure manner and utilize that and leverage that with one pane of glass to be shared out to any entity that's within the Mutualink family, state, local, enterprise, doesn't matter. So to that note, agnostic to technology endpoints, and because of that, we're able to utilize, and it's more important than ever to have networks such as FirstNet to be able to push that solution across not only a desktop, but also mobile devices that are deployed out in the field today. So when you're pushing out that mission critical radio, video connections, those communication, you would need to make sure you got that priority preemption of a service that FirstNet is able to provide to ensure that your entities that are out in the field are getting that clear and precise information without bandwidth or population issue infringing on that tower space. You heard me state a minute ago that Mutualink was the supplier for the interoperability gateway system. For those who don't know, FEMA utilizes a system called the IGS system, which is interoperability gateway system, which is a white label version of Mutualink. And what that platform does is allows those FEMA regions to communicate and share their resources for national continuity across each region down to the state and local agencies. Currently, we're at the phase of deployment now to where we're now interacting state agencies into that FEMA IGS system so that they could leverage that in the case of a hurricane. And we've already been doing that. We got a couple perfect examples here now. So one of those examples I'll talk about here in a minute, but it's important to point out, especially within that realm of FEMA and the response and leveraging that continuity and that discussion points in hurricane response, that we facilitate that emergency support function number 8. So that real-time communication and coordination between hospitals and those federal state agency partners, updating information on beds available, PPE, identifying and helping with identification of specific issues or instances, patient information, so on and so forth. Continuity planning for the healthcare facilities and others, communication down to those first responders, those EMTs, fire, even some of the information that can be pulled in from the local community. As you know, let's take an example of a city that has, let's say Orlando, for example, that has multiple different areas of tourism, and video camera and communications from those private entities are very important. Our system allows us to be able to leverage those types of resources in a public safety environment while keeping the sovereignty and privacy of the endpoint customer intact. Some of those examples, here's a good example from last year, Hurricane Dorian. Luckily, I'm located in the state of Florida, it never hit us. But this is the screenshot. Now, keep in mind, we ourselves were brought into this instance. We ourselves, just like any other customer, cannot infringe on any other incident that's being utilized by any entity on our network. We have to ourselves be invited into it, and we commonly are for support reasons. But here's a good example of Department of Transportation, District 5, doing a preparation for Hurricane Dorian. As it was right off the coast. If you notice at the bottom there, you see the U.S. FEMA Region 4 Op Center out of Atlanta. They're sharing information, they're sharing tax messages, they're sharing files such as declaration of emergency, tax waivers, so on and so forth. And those cameras that you're seeing on there were actually Department of Transportation cameras on major evacuation routes in Central Florida. Here's another quick screenshot of that. That's actually Hurricane Dorian right off the coast there. And then I'm going to transition over to Jeff here in a moment, and this is the perfect transition point to do that, so we could show you just a quick live walkthrough of the platform itself. But Jeff Duran was specifically involved in response to this specific Superstorm Sandy that was going on up north. And this is just another example of Mutualink's response of pulling that community together. In this case, it was up in New Jersey. So with that said, I'm going to transition now over to Jeff Duran. He's going to give you a quick live walkthrough of the platform itself in action.
Thank you, Dan, very much. Appreciate it. We'll get my screen up here, and we'll be able to show you Mutualink running on in a live environment. And I'll just want to confirm that the video is coming through. Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I'm only going to take just a few minutes here. This won't last more than 4 or 5 minutes to show you the actual live platform that Dan described to you. You're actually looking at a live Mutualink environment. And this map of the United States shows a kind of a heat map of available and stations reporting to the network. I'll zoom into the Northeast here, where we have a large concentration of Mutualink customers. This interface runs on any platform, Macintosh, Windows. We can run in a Google browser. You can run in a Java client, depending on your particular needs. But also overlaid on the screen is my iPhone 10. You can go right into the App Store, FirstNet, or your standard Play Store, iOS App Store, search for Mutualink. You can download our application, and then all you need is credentials from your agency administrator, and you'll be able to do everything you'll see me do right here. Now, I've took the liberty of pre-populating some situations here and to give you an idea of what Mutualink is. So Mutualink, you need to think of us as a community-wide information sharing platform. Now, what does that mean? In your own hometown, if you go to both sides of Main Street, you'll find that there's agencies, organizations, enterprises, and they probably maintain various kinds of communication resources. If you think about it, security officers walking around with handheld radios, our first responders with sophisticated radios, encrypted P25 radios, but also think about things that are very prevalent in today's world. Video surveillance has become a very big part of our ability to interoperate with each other. Mutualink believes that it's not just about hooking the first responders together. It's also about being able to go into our communities, getting to know our neighbors, and finding out if they're willing to share their resources with first responders during emergencies. So we call that a series of connected communities. And if I zoom into the Atlantic City area, you'll notice here that one good example of a connected community is Atlantic City, New Jersey, where all of the casinos, each of which maintain on average 2,500 surveillance cameras each, the law enforcement agencies that supply public safety to these agencies, and the community in general, which would be the New Jersey State Police and the Atlantic City Police Department. Now, what I'm going to show you here is actually very fascinating, because you've noticed over here on the iPhone, I've listed several casinos in Atlantic City. Now, with their cooperation, and by invitation, and that's how this system works, if you have a problem you need to solve, you look at your community map and you try to determine who's in the best position to give you data or information that would help you solve your problem. So in Atlantic City, the Atlantic City Police Department and the New Jersey State Troopers rely on the communication assets that the casinos own and operate. And in this particular case, we have some casinos. And if we zoom into the boardwalk of Atlantic City, you think about this in a hurricane context, and remembering back to October of 2012, where we had to respond to a very strong hurricane that came up the coast and damaged a lot of our area. We relied heavily on the assets of these cameras being shared by the various casinos. Now, what you see on my screen are 5 separate incidents. 4 of these incidents are actually communications with individual casinos as listed here. I am also connected to these casinos on my smartphone. Now, I got here because we created this incident and then we invited personally the individual casinos into their own unique incident. Now, these casinos are in separate incidents. That means they can't see what each other is doing, but they're sharing their video with me. So again, looking over at my smartphone for the Caesars Casino, by the way, we see a beach scene down there. If I'm a first responder or an executive in a corporation and I don't want to carry around a gigantic radio, I can also utilize my smartphone for turning it into a virtual 2-way radio or a virtual 2-way video device. So in other words, I can actually have communications directly with the surveillance team at Caesars Casino from my smartphone. Simply by pressing that intercom button, I can talk directly to them. If they have connected radios to this incident, by pressing the TX button, I can actually bridge into their radio system and have direct communications with their security team. So basically how that works, I'll go over to my colleague here, Craig Martin. By the way, we're both retired police officers, and I'll show you an example of how we can actually connect our radio assets together. I'll have a brief conversation with Craig. Hello, Craig, this is Jeff. Can you bring in your radio, please?
Affirmative, stand by.
All right, we're standing by for your radio, and then I'm going to show you an example of how I can transmit directly to Craig's radio over my smartphone by finding his incident, which is called operations on my smartphone, and then we'll be concluding this demo, showing you very quick. Craig, stand by for a radio transmission from the smartphone. So we'll go find our operations incident here, and you'll notice I have Craig in here, and if I press the TX button, Craig, from my smartphone, I'm trying to connect to your VHF radio. Is it possible for you to return communications to my smartphone, please?
Affirmative, I copy you loud and clear, about 11 miles directly east of Philadelphia.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate you helping me show how you can actually turn your smartphone into a virtual walkie-talkie and communicate to your VHF radio near Philadelphia. Thanks, Craig. You may stand down. So that's it in a nutshell. You have hundreds and hundreds of agencies to choose from on the network. If somebody's not on the network, you can actually extend invitations to them. They can fire up a Google Chrome browser and you can get them online in a couple minutes. And if you need to push video to them or comms to them, you can do that right away. Just wanted to have this real quick run through with you about the Mutualink platform. Mutualink has been around for 12 years and our footprint is slowly growing, and we can solve your interoperability problems directly with FirstNet. And with that, moderator, I'll turn it back to you for switching over to our next presenter. Thanks for your attention.
Hey, Michael,
Good
you're up.
afternoon. This is Michael Sher, and I'm the founder and CEO of Groupdolists. Thank you for joining today. I'm going to walk you through a very quick high-level slideshow. It'll take about 2 minutes to whip through that, and then we're going to go right into a live demonstration of the application. First thing, here's the problem. Disruptions are occurring at an unprecedented pace, and more so this year has been obviously unprecedented. Hurricanes are on the way, clearly. Solution, we're a mobile-centric platform that streamlines response processes, response teams, and information when seconds matter. What do? We bring response teams together instantly, virtually. We make standard and emergency procedures interactive. So the binders that you have on your shelves or the Word documents or PDFs that are stagnant and standardized, we basically help you transform those into interactive processes. We keep your response teams in sync. We bring response teams together and mobilize teams from anywhere in the world within seconds. So the goal is to make sure that the incident commander, the incident leadership, and the teams can all be in sync instantaneously, and that's what we do too. We centralize coordination and communication, and all activity is documented chronologically. So there's real-time insight, after action analysis, auditing, and reporting. So there's a lot of functionality within the tool, which you'll just see in a moment. We have a number of advisors on our Security Advisory Council. Kathleen O'Toole, former Boston Police Commissioner and former Seattle Chief of Police, has been engaged with us for a number of years. But basically, when it comes to situational awareness and real-time guidance and critical decision-making, we are a fantastic tool and very valuable and first of its kind. So with that said, I'm going to pull up my my web. This is my web interface. Okay, we support native iPhone applications and native Android applications, right? So all this content and what I'm about to show you can also be accessed and triggered and teams mobilized from a mobile device as well. But we're specifically talking about hurricanes today. And I have an example of a hurricane readiness procedure. So think of this as an SOP or an EOP. Hurricane's coming, or you believe it may strike the coast of South Florida, right? What do you do? So here are all the steps, again, that are typically in a binder or on a Word document or in front of an operations center. Review hurricane safety checklist. That's the first task. Mobilize hurricane first responders. So all the tasks in order, when they need to be completed, can be pre-assigned, predetermined, etc. In addition, each task can contain any type of rich media. Okay, so when this hazmat branch director gets this task assigned to him or her, all the content loads automatically and is available for them on their mobile devices, which you'll see in just a moment. In addition, you can add any type of file, link, location, or comments to a task. Okay, so again, the first part is let's access our plan. The second part is let's bring our response teams together. So what I'm going to do is pull up my iPhone, which you should be able to see in just a moment. And you can see that right now, this particular person who's involved in my team has no incidents or anything active. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to activate this procedure. So I'm taking this hurricane readiness, there's an event that's occurring, and I need to get my team on the same page. So this is where your predefined groups of people and distribution lists are, right? So you determine who needs to be involved, your OEM, your logistics folks, your HQ staff, okay? But the point here is I'm going to invite one person to this, and that's Michael at Groupdolists. That's me, all right? So watch what happens here when I tap confirm. My goal is to mobilize everybody as quickly as possible. Clint, the incident commander, has mobilized you for an incident called hurricane readiness. All he simply does is tap view. And once he accepts this invitation, all the content that is sitting here, on my command center view, in my office, on my laptop, in my home office, wherever I am as the incident leader, is going to be pushed down locally into everyone's devices. So now we're all on the same page, regardless of location, regardless of device. So the hazmat branch director will pull up the task, see that, oh, hurricane safety checklist, review it. They can tap right into it, go into it. This happens to be like a Red Cross hurricane safety list example, but it's sitting there, great. And watch what happens when this hazmat director checks this box. You'll see that this task quickly checks off, and we'll have 1 of 7 completed. So now we're 14% completed here. In seconds, we're also completed here. Mobilize hurricane first responders. Here's another task. Let me go into that. I can determine HQ facility staff I need to make sure they're invited, OEM, public safety, right? So I have my list, everything's predetermined. I'll check this box, and as soon as I do that, it'll check also on my mobile device. Quickly, a couple of other key things. I can add tasks on the fly to an existing procedure. So I've got hurricane readiness, right? But I can say, make sure Sean is in the loop, and I can assign it to, let's say, an EMS person, and I can put a due date reminder, but for the sake of keeping this moving, I will just close this. And you'll see, make sure Sean is in the loop automatically appears on my iPhone. Checks the box, completes it. We're 3 of 8. We also integrate with mass notification systems, which a lot of you probably currently are engaged with. This is an example of Everbridge. So if you have an Everbridge account, you can seamlessly access it, access an existing incident with existing content, or you can create one on the fly. We also integrate with SendWord Now, as well as Mir3. So when I tap, I can do locations, I can make spaces, etc. But any kind of functionality you already have in an existing mass notification system, one of those 3 can easily be accessed inside of our. Another capability is that you can bridge to a conference call. So we have a VoIP bridge. Calls can be recorded, calls can be transcribed. So as soon as I activate this and I want to bring my team together, it's very simple for me to do that. I just want to pull up my screen again. And all they have to do is tap to join, and they're connected. No dialing required, no PIN codes to tap, no pulling over on the side of the road like we all have to do, unfortunately, sometimes. It's tap to join and you're in. There's other functionality. You can change leaders. So if I wanted to basically change this to someone else on my team, I can easily do that with one tap. They can have the power, they can become the incident leader. There's also an audit trail. So all activity, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, all the activity is now kept automatically in a chronological order. So you can see that Clint activated this process, hurricane readiness procedure. He invited Michael. Michael accepted. He viewed this. He completed tasks. New tasks were created. Conference call was created, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of functionality. It's automatically documented when it comes to after action reporting, audit trails, et cetera. It's automatically created for you. And once the incident is stopped, when an all clear is called, and the incidents go away automatically from the participants' devices as well as your main screen, but there's a report that gets created in an Excel and or PDF format, which lets you easily cut and paste into situational reports, et cetera. So with that said, I thank you very much for your time. I'll be available for some questions after if you have any, and I'm going to turn this over to Steve and Devine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time in going through some of these technologies and applications. Certainly, hurricanes and COVID and a number of events that occur that public safety is responsible for responding to don't coordinate with each other. So this is a great example of how public safety's toolbox needs to be deeper and deeper to make sure that there's always the resources available going forward. I'm going to talk today about the FirstNet Response Operations Group and a little bit of information about how we give you insight as to the operations group going forward for FirstNet. Just a real high overview about 1.3 million FirstNet connections in place today, 12,000 public safety agencies and increasing. There's 100+ applications in the FirstNet app catalog that continues to grow, 100+ FirstNet ready devices. A number of build-out thresholds and commitments have been met. We're either on pace or ahead of schedule for most, including we'll talk a little bit more about dedicated deployable networks, network assets, including the flying cows and FirstNet One, 80% of Band 14 coverage completion per our contract with the FirstNet Authority, and then 700 markets with Band 14 spectrum in place. Specifically during COVID, the response operations groups had a unique role. A number of states, as you can see on the map here, have established testing sites and locations. There was well over 4,700 analysis and network assessments for coverage that were done. Some of those necessitated deployables to be sent out for the duration of the testing time frame. The number of public safety agencies that joined or expanded during COVID continues to grow. It's 450 agencies plus. A number of emergency requests with regard to COVID, and many of these assets have been put in place in support of COVID response or COVID testing or both for weeks, if not months on end, and will continue to. So the COVID process is FirstNet response adapts and moves through COVID just like it will storms, wildfires, etc. So we continue to focus on those issues specifically. Our objective is really to be public safety's direct partner for all FirstNet needs whenever they need it and wherever they need it. The response operation group, you may be more familiar with some of the FirstNet deployable trucks. The SATCOLTs, you'll see those are available in all states and territories, District of Columbia. The need for an agency to make a request, a FirstNet agency to make a request for a deployable is 24/7, 365. It's a 24/7 operation that's constantly monitoring the network and monitoring either outages or events that necessitate additional coverage. There's a nationwide toll-free number at no cost to the FirstNet customer to request a deployable asset. Our assets respond to both planned events and unplanned emergencies, small single jurisdictions to large multi-state events coordinating with a number of other AT&T resources. Initially, 72 dedicated deployable assets in the form of SATCOLTs, and in addition to that, we have hundreds of other AT&T labeled disaster recovery tools and resources that we have access to should we utilize or should we deplete the assets that are dedicated to FirstNet. So FirstNet has its own assets for FirstNetwork, and AT&T has additional resources that we can borrow when the need arises. The Response Operations Group is aligned with the FEMA National Response Network. The Response Operation Group within FirstNet actually has a presence in the National Response Coordination Center of FEMA. We actually sit at that desk. We work with FEMA and other federal agencies to coordinate our response, and it allows for direct operational status with public safety, and we can take that information and feedback and deploy in order to meet the customer's needs. Our relationship with both the federal government and state governments is built on trust and operational readiness. We integrate with the ESF2 functionality for each state. We develop a plan with each state and work with them to make sure that they know how to access FirstNet, and we incorporate FirstNet assets into that state ESF2 function. So it's not it's a planned process and protocol that's put in place. So when the disaster occurs, they know who they need to contact. They know how they need to access the resources that are available to them. And we have a handshake relationship with extended primary users, DOT and utilities and such. In many of those areas, those folks provide resources and services that support first responders. So while the FirstNet request is primarily a primary agency function, we're cognizant of the network and its impact to all FirstNet users, including the extended primary. This is an integration. This is a great slide. This shows the FirstNet deployable. This was in conjunction with Hurricane Michael in Florida, where the state of Florida was coming into the event, and you see the FirstNet trucks, AT&T and FirstNet label trucks are coming in conjunction with the state. This is an example of how we coordinate with the state, and it's not the state responds and then the wireless carriers. FirstNet's more than just that. It responds in conjunction with the agency, so we're able to provide the kind of resources we need, and we work in conjunction with the state. So we're in that same path. When the state arrives, we're already in place with that, and that's based on our relationship and our established protocol with each state. Another example of Hurricane Michael at the Tyndall Air Force Base, and some of these deployments were well over 60 days and some as many as almost 90 days or so in place. These are examples of true devastation where the network network coverage is available, and in many places we had to keep that resource there for months on end until infrastructure, fiber, et cetera, can be brought into place. So the connectivity is important, but this is an example of the response and how these things are positioned and made available during critical incidents such as hurricanes. And we know we have we're anticipating a substantial hurricane season coming up this year, and we're ready for that. And the ROG operation has learned from its past in the last 38 months. The Response Operations Group has learned a lot, and we're going to show you some new assets that we're bringing to the table as well to support first responders and the FirstNet customers. 76 deployables. It's The 72 SAT Colts on wheels you see there, 3 cell on wings. Those are deployables that actually are tethered drones that are capable of becoming a movable cell site that we're able to deploy during wildfires and events where infrastructure is not available, or during an incident where we couldn't get a SAT Colt in. They're available for both supported and unplanned events. And all band 14 enabled. They provide voice capabilities, data, etc. It can be as much as 25 megabits downlink and 8 megabits uplink. And we have SAT Colts pre-positioned in certain states. Texas, for example, has one of them. The Response Operations Group, led by all former first responders, works with agencies to determine the best asset and the functionality of the asset, whether we can get it in, the availability to meet the customer's need at the time. You'll hear more about this in the coming weeks. This is an aerostat. It is a tethered dirigible that's filled with helium that can fly upwards of 1,000 feet. It's about 55 feet long. We think in a lot of places, especially with regard to hurricane response, this is going to be a critical element. We would need several SAT Colts to be deployed to meet the same footprint as this dirigible would be. It takes a day or two in order for it to get up and running, but we really think our other resources can be better utilized when we've got an area where we need to cover. It could be several miles in radius of footprint from this base station that offers it. So for us, this really will free up other resources, and we're hoping that this resource is one that can better serve the users as necessary, and one can free up our other resources to maybe operate more on the fringe or in other areas. So this is a new resource that's coming up. This was not part of our contract. This is AT&T's innovation in its support of the FirstNet platform. And we felt that our first responders could benefit from this. So we've worked to build it with our user base, and it will continue to serve us and the first responders that we support. Our network is really now the critical link for all public safety as they protect America. Our support for public safety is no longer an elective opportunity, it's an imperative obligation. And FirstNet is a critical piece to first responders' toolbox going forward, and we think that's going to continue. One of the things I wanted to speak to today a little bit is what's called FirstNet Central. It's a centralized admin hub designed to provide easy access to account information. FirstNet Central is really the front page for FirstNet. It's the first place for the user to go to and to be able to manage their resources. Access FirstNet Central, single sign-on, view network status, outages, manage user groups, manage uplift, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, push-to-talk administration and control center, check services, billing, add devices, manage devices on the network, utilize MDM solutions, and then quick access to FirstNet apps through the app ecosystem that can be accessed via FirstNet Central. FirstNet Assist is the first native application built for FirstNet customers by FirstNet. This application provides easy customer support from iPhone and Android smartphones and tablets. It allows one push call to customer support when you've got this device this app loaded on your device, live chat text access with customer support, self-help diagnostics customized for that specific device, and then uplift request action from the field. Incident uplift is only available for devices connected to the FirstNet core with FirstNet SIMs. If you're on FirstNet customer and you've got an orange SIM, uplift is not an option. We suggest you migrate your device and get to FirstNet SIM as soon as possible if you're a FirstNet customer. And then just as a summary here, uplift is really a process where a responder or an agency admin is given a higher priority on the network to help ensure their access to critical communications during the event. The process is subtle to the user. They'll get migrated from their static degree of access, and uplift will raise them to that level of access that they need going forward. It may be created anytime, 24/7. Uplift managers within a primary agency can create an uplift event using an uplift request tool. A manager can uplift users that are in their footprint, not necessarily on their agency. The incident commander can uplift users regardless of whether they work for them or not. FirstNet subscriber on the FirstNet Assist app can make an uplift request within 100 miles of the event. The FirstNet Assist, a responder may request uplift from the agency that created the uplift event. Primary users have the highest priority on the network, and then uplift allows primary and extended primary users to be elevated to the same level for the duration of the incident. And that is it. Back to you, Martha. Thank you for your time.
Okay, fabulous. Boy, thank you guys so much. That was extremely informative. I think one of the things that is so obvious with the advent of FirstNet is the incredible innovation that is now really being cut loose. And having that reliable network and all of these incredible app developers and hardware developers being able to, as the title of our webinar suggests, lean in to making sure that they're producing these extremely intuitive device and applications for the end user. I think we're going to see just a tectonic shift in how we do things in the world of first responding. So with that, we have about 9-10 minutes for some quick questions. So I will start with Thomas. This question goes to you. How can you text people that have not opted to receive texts?
So the regulation here is the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and then broadly the FCC. And because every text is sent by a human being one by one, that makes us not an auto or blast texter. And that's the simple explanation, but happy to provide more information to anyone who's curious. At the end of the day, it allows us to text people and then opt them out if they don't want to have the conversation, but to have conversations with people who do.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Michael, this one is for you. How difficult is it to set up and activate a Groupdolist account and get trained?
Great question, thank you. It's very simple. It takes less than an hour to set up and train. We have a customer support staff that's available 24/7. So it's simple to activate an account, simple to configure. We can train in under an hour, and there's lots of online help tools as well. Very simple process. And by the way, part of the process also will allow us to take your plans and transform them as included in the base rate. So any plan you have on the shelf, et cetera, we can help you. Our team will do that at no extra charge.
Great, thank you so much. Dan, is there, oh, I'm sorry, was there more to add?
Nope.
Oh, okay, sorry. Dan, is there funding available to help with procurement of these, of this application?
Yes, actually there is. So outside of us having specific grant writers that are on staff that will help our customers hunt down those funding paths, due to our association within that National Continuity Program and FEMA, we have our product is actually eligible under a lot of the SafeCom grants, specifically HHS, SafeCom, FEMA SafeCom grants. We have several customers that have procured recently that have utilized those grants already. And have applied for those. We are a named item on those. COPS grants, so on and so forth. So we have a very seasoned staff that is able to assist and hunt down state-specific grants, local grants, if funding becomes an issue.
All right, thank you very much. Steve, these next few questions are actually directed for you. Apparently there was an acronym that was used and somebody was asking what the QPP stands for.
Sure. Quality of service, priority and preemption, and those layers of the FirstNet Assist and the FirstNet Uplift actually are different levels of priority with regard to the device and the network. So QPP stands for quality of service and priority and preemption, which FirstNet provides to its users above the traditional commercial network.
Fabulous, thank you. There's another question here, Steve, that I think might be best suited for you. Can you all say anything about the importance and progress of FirstNet in building public safety RF coverage?
Sure. You know, FirstNet is designed to support first responders, and first responders have coverage needs both you know, outside and in building, and that's a continued part. As AT&T you know, has thousands of buildings where we have coverage. I'm sure there's some buildings where we need to, in the life of our contract, that coverage needs to be improved. But we have DAS in place, and we have in-building coverage in a lot of buildings. Do we have it in all of them? Probably not, and that's probably part of our continued dialogue with the FirstNet Authority and the states to identify areas where we can improve coverage both outdoor as well as indoor.
Can you just take a moment to define DAS and explain what the functionality is of that?
Sure. A DAS is a distributed antenna system. Many buildings, buildings that hold large events have distributed antenna systems. Sometimes they're owned by a specific carrier. Sometimes they're owned by the facility, and the facility gives access to the DAS to different carriers to be able to leverage that, and it's managed by the facility itself. There's a number of different arrangements it can be, but it's really a distributed antenna system that is focused on providing better in-building coverage. You're not beating coverage from outside into the concrete walls. You actually have distributed the antennas and are providing coverage within the facility itself. You see it a lot in arenas and convention centers, in areas where there's a lot of traffic and they need a lot of coverage. It's just easier to distribute them that way, and AT&T leverages. FirstNet users get, of course, to access all of AT&T's DAS throughout the country.
Right. I bet that's particularly helpful in some of the EOCs that are being built like fortresses these days as well. So that's great. Great information. Okay. One last question regarding the deployable, Steve. When an agency requests a deployable and it actually shows up and integrates into their operations, what is the time constraints? Are there any limitations on how long the deployable can stay?
No, there really isn't. The deployable stays until the first responder has the capabilities that they need. So that's as I indicated in Hurricane Michael, we had some that stayed literally down there for months until some networks were able to be reconstituted, and the sheriff didn't want us to take it until they were back up and running completely. So that's an agreement between AT&T and the customer. There is no time frame. There is a time frame, a 14-hour deliverable. In some states it's a little different, but generally speaking, from the time it's requested to the time it's on scene is a 14-hour, what we call required time on scene, or RTO. And that's a time frame in which we either work within or usually beat. And of course, there's no cost to the agency making the request for the resource as needed. So.
And with some of these events that are somewhat predictable, in particular hurricanes that we're speaking of today, what are some of the additional groundwork efforts that are being made by FirstNet to make sure that when they do show up, that the integration into this operation is seamless and much of the things as far as staging and so forth can be anticipated?
Sure, great question, Martha. So, the deployables are, we work with counties and cities and agencies and the states themselves to identify the areas. We triage the process. In many instances, we have to wait for the storm to pass in order to respond. We work in conjunction with AT&T's Network Operations Center and our Global Technology Operations Center, see the status of the network, where our resources need to go first, where they need to go later. The introduction of the Aerostat, or FirstNet 1 as it's called, is going to really kind of change that dynamic, because we're going to be able to meet that larger footprint and then better utilize our assets in smaller communities and smaller areas as they get reconstituted and back up and running.
Fantastic. So that deployable program is really going to be able to pretty much fill in any potential gap, whether it's a catastrophic event or maybe something that's just based on the topography and so forth. So really all of the nooks and crannies of the country will be able to be serviced. Is that correct?
It is, and we respond to events. We respond to man-made and disaster events. Really, the FirstNet customer makes a request. We look at the network. We determine the need. Sometimes they may still have coverage there, but the event may necessitate additional coverage or additional capacity, and that process, that triage process, will be in place, and the clock starts, and we get the resource in the field, and those resources can stay there for quite some time until the customer is comfortable that the network's back up and running and they no longer need the asset.
Outstanding. All right, well, we are coming to the end of our hour, so I would really like to thank all of our presenters. I think the information was outstanding. Hopefully it'll give some of the end users and decision makers within the agencies an opportunity to kind of vet out some of the challenges that they're trying to overcome and how they might overcome those challenges with your software and the network. So we hope you enjoyed our webinar today and felt that it was time well spent. We deeply appreciate your participation. There are handouts available on the GoToWebinar platform under the handouts section on the right hand side. So you'll need to download those now before we actually sign off. So please go do that if you're interested in grabbing some of those handouts off of the platform. And again, we are the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, and we want to be your advocate for all aspects of FirstNet utilization. I would encourage you to become a member of our association for only $75 a year. You'll help support our efforts to continually bring you the cutting edge information about FirstNet, the nation's only fully dedicated mission critical first responder network, and all aspects of the ecosystem that are being purpose built to your advantage. Please visit our webpage at thepsbta.org for more information on the association, becoming a member, our upcoming webinars, and recordings of all of our previous webinars. Also, please consider visiting allthingsfirstnet.com. Their team continually compiles valuable information on FirstNet and the developing ecosystem as well. This concludes our webinar. Hurricanes won't be diverted by COVID-19. Please join us next week as we go into harsh 2020 wildfire season, predicted, complicated with, as we know, COVID. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.